following takes place between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. It is a Thursday episode of Full Press Coverage Radio Live. It is Tom Brady Day, 12/12, December the 12th, 2019. I am Ian Glendon, and I am pleased to welcome in, as I do each and every morning, Mr. Rhode Island himself, my co-host, Mr. Mike Debate. Mike, how are we doing today?
Good morning, everyone. Absolutely.
Whoa.
Interesting that you brought up.
Hold on. I didn't get the la. Come on, give me.
Oh, la, la.
There we go. All right. Okay. Come on. You're throwing me off here, Mike. You know, we have a routine, and you throw a speed bump in this early. Okay. Focus. Refocus.
Yes.
Try that again.
Purpose, focus. Yes, absolutely. Bring that down to our level. Definitely.
Let's reset this. Okay. Ready? Welcome in, Mike. How are we doing today?
La, la.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Round of applause. You can see it on camera. I'm clapping.
Yeah, you'll like that. I know you've heard that several times before. I know you're a big fan of it. So yeah, but no, in all actuality, December 12th, you hit the nail right on the head. I can't believe that it's only 13 days until Christmas, and it's just flying by. 2019 is about to say goodbye, and it's unbelievable. But you also mentioned Tom Brady Day. It's a huge day here in New England. 12/12, and if you add up 2 + 0 + 1 + 9, it equals 12.
Okay, it checks out. I just did it
Here
on my
in New
hand.
England.
So, if I had my abacus at hand, I'd be able to figure it out quicker. But I used my fingers, if you could not see on on camera. But yeah, look, it's we're flying through this week, and you said it 13 days before Christmas, which means only 11 days until Festivus, and we're going to be excited because we're going to do a Festivus special. We're going to be on air for 2 hours that day because, well, the following 2 days we won't be on air because of the holidays. But Festivus, we are going to air a lot of grievances, and we hope that you folks out there, join us and have fun with us as well. So, right off the bat, once again, we got a nice little gift with a late night Major League Baseball signing. So Anthony Rendon signed 7 years, $245 million with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Yes, that's right. The Angels, who have no pitching, just added more hitting. So, but look, Anthony Rendon from 2016 to 2019, 299 average, obviously averaging 26 home runs and 101 RBI. And if you are a big WAR fan or a wins above replacement guy, he is fourth in that time behind only Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, and Christian Yelich. So basically, it's a laundry list of MVPs right there. So look, the Angels are getting a really good player. They still have a lot of concerns pitching wise, but I mean, look, I'm more excited for Scott Boras because this guy's in the last three and a half days has wheeled and dealed about $800 million in Major League Baseball contracts. The guy's pretty good at his job. Let me tell you.
No, it's true. I mean, whenever you take a look at these huge contracts that go out and the enormous amounts of money that come back, he's usually attached to it. And, you look at Major League Baseball, the way it's constituted and the money that's being, just driven around right now, it's phenomenal. And, I mean, good for Rendon. I mean, there's no question about it. He definitely makes the Angels lineup much, much better. He will make that lineup much better for a number of years to come. But at the same time, you also look at it, I think you made a decent point there as well, is that they don't have a whole lot of pitching right now. And that's something that they need to work with, because when you have the most talented player in the game in Mike Trout, and he is without a doubt the most talented player in the game, you need to surround him with the pieces that are going to be able to allow him to contend and allow this team to contend. Maybe they do it by committee. Maybe they go for some lesser arms. I know the other I think yesterday or the day before, I saw on Twitter that there were some sort of rumors going around about Rick Porcello there. I mean, there's some things that could come down and that could be a possibility. I know there's rumors going around that he might be involved, or that the Angels might be involved in trying to trade for David Price, which is a name that we know very well up here in New England. That could be an issue as well. And you take a look at the synergy that Joe Madden has had with David Price and managing him in Tampa Bay. So there's a lot going on there, and we'll just see what happens. But huge contract for Anthony Rendon. Good for him. A lot of big numbers being thrown around in Major League Baseball right now. And, I think now that the big dominoes have fallen, I think now you're going to see a lot of those lesser pieces come in. That's usually how it works in free agency with every, with every major sport.
Starting to think I should have been a Major League Baseball player. I think I erred in choosing not to do that. So and trust me, it was
I think we all
solely a
did.
choice. It wasn't my lack of talent, ability, height, strength, anything like that. It was just purely a choice that I did not do that. So, and I'm sure you're the same way, Mike, because obviously we could have been making $300 million over the next 9 years if that was the case.
That's true.
But
Absolutely.
seriously, no, that's not the case. I was actually I was an okay pitcher, but I injured my shoulder in hockey, and once that was done, I had nothing left. no power, no gas in the tank, as they say. So
yeah, I was not nature selected to be an athlete, no question about it. I definitely I tried my best. I played a few sports and did everything that I could, but I was not nature selected to be the $300 million man without any question.
Yeah, you were unfortunately saddled with the vertically challenged gene, if I'm correct. But hey,
Yeah. Yes,
if
no, you are.
only if only you were 20 years old now, you could almost be an NFL quarterback, because we know how it's trending down. Trending to the shorter guys at times. You can be successful if you were 20 years younger and maybe more
Hey,
athletic. But I tell myself
that's why we
too.
all love Dustin Pedroia up here in
Yeah,
New England. That's the reason for it. He gives us all hope.
exactly. Exactly. If only he was Italian. I mean,
Yep.
that would be your hero. But
Yes, it would. Yeah.
absolutely. So
No, still love Dustin anyway.
yeah, of course. So there's a lot of we're gonna get into Roger Goodell. Obviously was at the had a press conference yesterday at the owners meeting. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Before we do, the San Jose Sharks, shifting to hockey real quick, became the latest team to can their coach. And this isn't, a few of these coaches have lost their jobs because of some off the ice issues in terms of, the issues that are going around in hockey right now. Gary Bettman had announced his 4-point plan to help combat the abuse and whatnot in hockey, and some of these coaches have lost their jobs because of that. Peter Dubois is not one of them. He lost his job because the Sharks stink, and this was kind of very obvious to me personally, but his team is far too old with far too many big contracts to compete in a very stacked Western Conference and very stacked league in general. So after a 15-16-2 start, they canned their coach, and the one connection we have Boston-wise to San Jose, obviously, is Jumbo Joe. And if there's one guy I'd like to see win a Stanley Cup, if it's not the Bruins, it would be Joe Thornton. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So he gets the can. Other news, Troy Aikman. Would you take him as your GM? I don't know. He's looking for something. Or at least he's intrigued by the idea. Just he doesn't want to do it in Dallas, and who could blame him when you have Jerry Jones, perched on your shoulder 24/7.
For someone that has the clout and the reputation, and I guess the admiration of so many in Dallas, for him to come out and say that he doesn't want that job, that should tell you something about the atmosphere in the front offices
I'd say so.
in Big D. I think it's pretty damning. But in any case, he's knowledgeable. I mean, you can definitely see that he's dialed in by being an analyst in the NFL. A lot of people scoff at that and they roll their eyes and they go, "Oh yeah, caller analyst thinks he can run a team," but they are dialed into the inner workings of what these teams do. You see Troy Aikman do it. You see Tony Romo do it. Now, whether or not you're a fan of some of their styles and some of the way that they, market themselves, that's a separate issue. But if you take a look at what these guys bring to the table analysis-wise, they're pretty good. They're pretty dialed in. Romo is usually pretty spot on as much as I don't want to give him the credit for it sometimes, he is very good at what he does. Aikman is the same way. I think he's got a little bit more behind the scenes. I think he's a little bit more dialed in and in tune to the inner workings of what it actually takes to be a general manager and not just an evaluator of talent, because there is a dichotomy between those two. But with regard to Aikman, yeah, I would take a shot. I think that he's someone that could probably come in, inject maybe a little bit of life into a fledgling franchise, and see what is the capabilities down the line. So yeah, I think I would take a shot if that was something that I could do. I would definitely look into it.
Look, Bruce Allen and Ryan Grigson have been and are GMs in this league and have spent significant times in that role. So absolutely, I would. Again, this is assuming he has the qualifications, because we don't know his behind the scenes resume and all that stuff. I mean, when you're applying for a job, you're going to get in a little bit more detail. So I'm assuming he's not just going to say this if he doesn't have some sort of credentials aside from just maybe just being an analyst. Because again, I mean, there's a lot more that goes into being a GM than just knowing the game of football. You have to understand certain practices, how the NFL run, all that stuff. And I think he, I'm assuming, would have a pretty strong grasp of that. And like you said, though, the fact that he says he wouldn't want to do it in Dallas can be pretty telling. I mean, the one not so negative way I guess he can spin it is just the idea of having to go back and do it in a city, like maybe he just doesn't want to have to go back to Dallas, type of thing. You know what I mean? Like maybe he doesn't want that pressure, because again, if he goes back to Dallas, it's a much different expectations, I would think. Look at John Elway in Denver. Actually, you know what? I think I just changed my own mind in a matter of 3 seconds, because look at John Elway and look at the leash that he's gotten. And I think a lot of that has to do because he was John Elway and he was a Denver Broncos legend. I mean, I've never seen a guy strike out on more quarterbacks and keep his job than John Elway. So maybe, hey, look, maybe it's the smart thing for him to take a gig with the Cowboys. Then again, the Denver ownership is a little bit different than the Dallas ownership. I'm just making an observation from the outside.
No, and it's true, and it might not only be the Jerry Jones factor either. I mean, naturally, we like to poke fun at that, and I think that's probably the reason. But the other is too. I mean, you don't want to fail in a market where you're seen as where you're revered. I mean, I think that's any athlete or anybody in any walk of life doesn't want to go into a place where they have a very high reputation, a very strong reputation, and then sputter a little bit and maybe tarnish that legacy. I agree with you. In Denver, I think it's a situation where Elway is just, no matter what he does, it wouldn't matter. He's still going to be John Elway. He's still going to be the guy that brought them to Super Bowls, had them in contention, and he was the quarterback of the Denver Broncos. I mean, that's really what his identity is always going to be. But with regard to Aikman, I think maybe he sees things a little bit differently. But I think he could be a very good fit with some teams that really need some help in the front office, and I think he could inject life. His presence might be enough to persuade some free agents to be able to take a flyer and come there and see what's going on. So that'll be interesting to watch. I did see that report yesterday, and I think it's one that's worth watching, for potential stories down the line.
Yeah, and look, the amount of time that the longevity that he's had doing this job, being a broadcaster, and a team one, an A1 broadcaster. This guy obviously is part of the number one crew on Fox or whatever. So, you build and you cultivate relationships through that job. I mean, look at what John Gruden did. Obviously, he had coaching experience prior to being in the booth, but he spent so much time in the booth that that's kind of what a lot of people knew him as the Monday Night Football guy. But all of a sudden, he's used those relationships to kind of build a foundation for when he did return to coaching, and obviously that happened a couple of years ago. So Pete Carroll, Seattle Seahawks, and I don't know if this is going to come as much as a surprise or more of a vindication of such, says they have to figure out a way to get Josh Gordon more involved. And if that sounds familiar to you Patriots fans out there, that kind of is the story that was surrounding him before. Now, no one's obviously, we love Josh Gordon as a person, as a player, all that, and we wish him the best. But I think there was a clear step back in his explosiveness and his ability to make plays and get open, and we saw that you take so much time off, you put on some weight like he did, muscle wise, but you still put on some weight, you lose some of your jolt and spark. And I think he might have done that a little bit. He doesn't quite have that separation that he needs. And it's quite evident in 4 games. You have, for Josh Gordon in Seattle, 6 catches for 81 yards and no touchdowns. Um, and look, the Seahawks have struggled a little bit these last couple weeks and have dropped from the second seed all the way down to number 5. So, are you surprised, or is this kind of just kind of giving you more of an indication as to why the Patriots might have said, you know what, it's okay if we move on and let him go take an opportunity somewhere else?
I really hate to say I'm not surprised, but I'm not surprised.
Mhm.
And the reason why I'm not surprised is because a lot of the rumblings that I was hearing as he was released and, well, not released, but, put on injured reserve and then eventually released outright was not so much because of anything off the field. It wasn't. There's no correlation there. I've never
Mhm.
heard anything that it was in any way related to any of Josh's off the field problems. But there were some conditioning issues that I was hearing rumblings about. And that's not to say he wasn't in good shape. He is in good shape. He works out, very vigorously. But it was game conditioning. There's a difference between being in good shape, being strong, being physically fit, and being able to withstand the rigor and the stamina of being on the field. So that may be a problem as well. The other is you start hearing rumblings about him coming to meetings late and things of that nature. So I think this is something definitely to keep an eye on. The Seahawks definitely have the wherewithal to be able to do it. As much as we like to, use Pete Carroll and make him out to be some sort of a punchline, the guy is very good at what he does. He's one of the best coaches in the league. If there's a way to work him in and be able to utilize him, I think Pete's probably the right guy for him to be around right now. But ultimately, it doesn't surprise me that he's not playing a bigger role in Seattle than he was, simply because of the fact that I just think that there's maybe a little bit still going on with Josh and getting back into where he needs to be. This is in a lot of ways, I think maybe a redshirt year for him. And, he's getting reps. I mean, he's not,
Mhm.
relegated to the bench all the time, but in a lot of ways, I think this is him trying to get back to where he needs to be. If you're looking for the Josh Gordon of old, I think it may be next year before you see that, if ever again. I mean, there's always a chance that when guys come back and they've missed as much time away from the game and away from the field as Josh has, sometimes you just don't get it back. And again, this is in no way correlated to any type of off the field issues that Josh has had in the past. From what my understanding is, he's left those completely behind.
Mhm.
I think this is just a matter of him getting back into football mindset, football game shape. And those two things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. That's a tough thing to do when you've had so much time away from the game.
Yeah, and look, I agree. I don't think there's been any indication that there's anything off the field in terms of the issues he's dealt with in the past, which is for me the biggest thing I want to see him succeed at is obviously life and all that stuff. But the Seahawks again, this NFC conference is wild because a week ago you had the Seahawks and the Saints atop the NFC, and now you got San Francisco and Green Bay in those 2 spots. So it's it's crucial for Seattle to win these games, and they look like they've started to flatline a little bit these last couple weeks. Their offense is a little bit more stagnant. Russell Wilson's play has dipped a little bit. I think there's at this point, there's no chance that he regains any sort of neck and neck race with Lamar Jackson. In my opinion, I think Lamar has, in terms of the MVP race, I think Lamar's kind of got this wrapped up. Um, so look, I mean, for Seattle to be successful, they need their offense running at full capacity because the defense it's good, but it's not 2013 Seattle Seahawks defense. You need that offense to score points. We've seen it a lot, even in games they've won, they've had to score points. So Josh Gordon has to be a big part of that if the Seattle Seahawks want to keep rolling forward. So GM meeting, or I'm sorry, owner meetings over the weekend produced obviously a very rigid, very robotic press conference from Roger Goodell, and none of us should be surprised because that's kind of it's kind of his mo. You get up there and you give a very very scripted answer with very softball questions on a few of them. So one of the
Yes, in other words, in other
he,
news, folks, today is Thursday, by the way.
yes,
That's
pretty much a day in the life of Roger Goodell. So um, yeah, look, I don't think anyone expects to get too much substance out of what he says. I mean, a lot of it is just window washing and, surface material just to appease people. And really, at the end of the day, sometimes he just says nothing in about a whole bunch of words. Um, so he talked obviously on a couple topics, of one of which was Antonio Brown, and they 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 say the investigators still have work to do. They obviously interviewed him almost 2 weeks ago, and this is what he said in regards to that.
Yeah, they're still not completed the investigation. They did, our investigators did. I did not meet with Antonio, but they have more work to do. They're following up on that, and I'll get an update when they have more information.
My question is, what the hell's taking so long? Like, I mean, I understand, like, you have to do your due diligence, but this continues to me to seem like it's just they're just dragging their feet. They don't want to make any official ruling on him, so they're just going to drag this out as long as possible. And he reacted yesterday, obviously, and again, kind of, I don't want to say shot himself in the foot, but I mean, he didn't do himself any favors with some of the things he was saying. I I find it hard to put a lot of blame. I mean, let's put it this way. I find it hard to put all the blame on him for the way he reacts to this, because if I were him too, I'd be incredibly frustrated. Because again, it just seems like the NFL has no urgency in um, getting this wrapped up. They're basically dragging their feet to keep him out of the league without actually suspending him or putting him on the exempt list. So um, to me, it just keeps seeming like a bad look for the NFL, and I think Antonio Brown at least deserves an answer. And depending on what that answer is, he deserves to be on the football field. So, yeah, I mean, but again, that's kind of what I expected from Roger Goodell.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of did. I don't think there's much of a question mark. And to answer your question about what's taking so long with that, you, it, unfortunately, I think it just essentially means that they don't want him on the field this year. And I
Exactly.
think that, the longer that the investigation goes, and I understand due diligence is due diligence. These are sensitive and potentially serious matters. So you have to be very careful in the way that's worded. You have to be very careful in your actions and doing what you need to do. So I don't want to jump all over the league here and start, fueling the conspiracy fire. But at the same time, there's also something to be said about a human being that if he is in any way falsely accused of what happened, really keeping him off the field and keeping him from being able to do what he's trained to do, what he's meant to do, and what he wants to do for a living, and that's play football. And if that's the case, then yeah, there is a level of frustration. There's also a level to be said about taking to social media to
Hmm.
just blurt everything that you have to. Antonio Brown's biggest problem is he has no filter. It just
Yeah.
doesn't seem to sink into his head that this course of action may not be smart. It may not be the best way to go about doing things. So in that case, yeah, I feel for Antonio in terms of, the fact that he can't find his way onto the field and that the NFL investigation is holding him up from being able to move forward and potentially sign with teams. But at the same time, you look at what he does on social media and then you say, well, I don't know. It's just, you're not helping your cause here. You really got to take the phone, throw it away, put it down, do whatever you need to do, sit on it, whatever you need to do to keep it out of your hands and to be able to move forward. So, yeah, it's just disheartening on all levels. But Goodell's answer is pretty much what I expected, and that's not that sounds derisive. It's not. It's just I think that's all he could say at this point, without either looking more foolish or without invoking more fuel to the fire for reporters to ask him questions. So yeah, that's I definitely did see that, and that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and look, I mean, everyone's gonna have different opinions on the matter. I think people who were anti Antonio Brown to begin with are still that, and I think there's a pretty clear separation between the two sides, I guess. But I don't know. To me, it's always just stunk to me, the entire situation. Just because, again, I they said on the at the time that all this started to break that they were going to move quickly. And again, it's been 2 months. It took them nearly 2 months to even talk to Antonio Brown. And if I understood that answer correctly, it seems like Goodell didn't even talk to Antonio Brown. So that tells me to them,
That surprised me.
yeah. And
That
to me,
surprised me when I hear
tells
that.
me,
I mean, something of one of your highest profile players, one of your highest profile personalities, whether he's controversial or
Mhm.
not, definitely deserves at least the due diligence of the commissioner's office. And I think it's especially in something like this. We're not talking about deflated footballs here, folks. All right, and I know I'm not going to get into that, but there's a little bit of a varying degree in seriousness as opposed to what those types of allegations are and what these types of allegations are. The commissioner needs to take a more hands-on role in this. That surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, and again, I look, I like I said, I've been on the Antonio Brown side of things, with the one caveat saying I think he deserves due process, and I do think there's a legitimate case to be made that he's not guilty of these things. But again, that I'm basing my opinion on that assumption, which again is what the criminal justice system in this country is supposedly built on, is innocent until proven guilty. But that's a debate for another show, another day, and another couple hours. But so to me, when I see stuff like that, it further cements the idea in my head that they're just dragging their feet on purpose to keep him out of the league at least this year, and they'll deal with it in the off season when there's less eyes on them and they can kind of go about their business and whatnot. So another topic that got brought up to Roger Goodell inevitably was the referees this year, and this is the answer he had for that.
Consistency is the number one thing we're always trying to achieve. And we, every year, have engaged in changes that have been designed to make us more consistent and better. Obviously, the standard keeps getting higher as we add new elements. That's a standard. But two, I think what people see nowadays with technology is much greater than it was even 5 years ago, clearly 10 or 15. I think our officials do an outstanding job, but we always seek to improve. And we will engage in that. We have engaged in that, and I promise you that will continue.
I assure you that was a clip from his press conference and not the South Park episode and the Goodell bot. What did he say? I mean, the question was essentially around: are you concerned about the issues all this obviously talking about pass interference replay and all that had on the game? And basically, he gave a politician's answer, in my opinion, because he didn't really say anything. He just was like, "Oh yeah, technology has made it harder." Okay, great. You've made it harder on yourself.
Yeah, there was no answer to the question there. There,
Yeah.
there absolutely wasn't. I mean, anybody that listens to that or hears it can tell you that there was no answer to the question. And again, I don't expect him to answer, to give a long diatribe on that right now, simply because it's going to invite more questions, and that's not something that Roger Goodell is comfortable doing. He just isn't. I mean, you see, the press conferences that he's had in moments past where he has to address controversial subjects. He diffuses them simply in that way. He's good at it. I will say that he gives answers that make it sound like he's completely answering your question. Where if you actually take a look at the words he's doing, he really doesn't say much. So yeah, to me, the advent of technology is not really a strong enough argument to me to say that makes officiating tougher. If anything, what you have to do is adapt to that technology, those technological advances, and you have to utilize that to make your referees better. Whatever that happens to be, happens to be. It's not something that is, to me, that seems that very hard in concept. Maybe it's hard to put it into practice. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that, but it's not that hard in a concept. Too many games are being decided by NFL officials that are ruling incorrectly. And I'm not just talking about the Patriots game against the Kansas City Chiefs. We all know how that ended. This has gone back to last year. You take a look at the NFC Championship game last year. I mean, come on. You talk about, I know Patriots fans are, up in arms about what happened last Sunday. Imagine being Saints fans last year. I mean, those are really, really difficult things. And we see fan bases all the time affected by that. One call here and there blown and stuff like that, but egregious misfires like this, they have to be shored up. They have to be better. And the referees have to be more professional. They just have to be better at what they do, whether that's additional training, whether it is utilizing some form of technology to their advantage and learning how to harness that. That's one thing, but ultimately you can't just dismiss it away and say, oh yeah, technology, it makes our job tougher. Well, if it makes your job tougher, you got to do it better.
Well, let's use the example, and just because it's fresh in our memory, the example from the Patriots game. Technology didn't blow that call on that touchdown. That was that was a referee in plain sight missing a call. I mean, that has nothing to do with technology. That's just not doing a good job at your job. So, I think that was a little bit of a cop out answer. I understand what he was trying to say. Like, yes, the advent of every angle and every blade of grass on replay has opened the door for super scrutiny on every play that gets reviewed. So I understand what he's trying to say, but I don't think that's an excuse for how poor the officiating has been across the board. Again, we use the Patriots game as an example because it's so fresh in our memory, and it's a pretty blatant example of the refs just doing a poor job and it not being technology that screwed them over. So one of the things, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and it was about the playoff seeding because it did get brought up at the conference, and to his credit, I don't think he has any any desire for that to change. I think he's all right with the playoff seeding, and this was his response. Oh, and this might be one of my favorite responses because it's just so pompous. So listen to this.
As you know, well, I've been around probably a lot longer than you have. But I'm just telling you, this is not the first time this conversation's occurred or this situation's occurred. As you know, teams go into the season, the first objective is to win the division. That's what they work on, is we win the division, we get in the playoffs. And that is something that we've considered over the years. I have not heard that this year. I don't anticipate hearing it again. Again, it's been discussed in the past, but I don't see that as an issue. Now, if it comes up, we'll certainly have the conversation, but I don't anticipate it.
Yeah. See, I love the beginning. Yeah, I think I've been around longer than you. I think I might know a little bit more. I mean, he's probably right. Let's be real, because I mean, he has been around a lot longer, but it's just kind of, to me, it's like, all right, Roger, we got it. But basically what I think he was trying to say was, we look at all the angles, we look at all the options, if it were to improve the product. And I think right now that it just doesn't. And here's the thing too, if you start reseeding and devaluing, winning the division, then you're losing a lot of that. Like, you need divisional races to make things interesting throughout the year. You need those divisional races to build long-standing rivalries and stuff like that. And look, you should be just, rewarded if you win your own division. And like I said yesterday, I think the only two teams that actually deserve to have a home field game is the teams that are number 1 and number 2 in each conference. Everything else after that, I don't care. If you're 11-5 and you have to go visit a team that's 9-7, well, who cares? I mean, deal with it. In my opinion, I mean, you should have done better. You should have got a first or second seed, and then you would have definitely got a home field advantage, at least for one game. So I guess I'm kind of with Roger on this one, although I do think it's pretty obvious that it shouldn't be changed, and it would just be a blatant overreaction. And if the pass interference challenge rule is any indication, the NFL isn't always, the NFL doesn't always benefit from knee-jerk reactions to rules or situations and changing them. So I'm with Roger on this one. You got to just kind of deal with the fact that sometimes you're going to get a lower seed or a team with a lower record hosting a home game, and it's really not an issue in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is either. I think that a lot of what is going on with the way division, leaders are assigned playoff spots and whatnot, I think it's more. I think you have to be a little bit more, prudent in terms of saying, okay, well, they won the division. This is it. This is how it's always been. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the response there was really kind of condescending, and I think it's just a sign of how those questions are answered.
Conversations occurred.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, it's a first. Yeah, no.
That's a new
I'll
one.
Yeah, exactly. I'll reserve comment. I'll be nice, but in any case, yeah. I mean, I don't think there should be in that respect. I do agree with them. I don't think there should be a reshuffling. I think that it's definitely good. That they're doing it the way they're doing it. I understand that some teams are probably upset because they have higher records, they have higher power rankings, and there's a lot more going on in terms of the teams that want to have different playoff seedings. But ultimately, division leaders it's the way it's always been, and I don't see that changing into this year and even beyond. I think it's still going to continue to be there. I don't think you're going to see a shuffling of the playoff seeds once teams get in and just have like it go by record. Or I've even heard some people suggest doing like a almost like a lottery type thing. I think that's
Yes.
ridiculous. That opens a Pandora's box for a whole lot more problems. So I don't think the system is broken enough for it to warrant being fixed.
Yeah, you know what that is? That's yeah.
Dum 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 dum.
Like I like I said, too many people react to the most recent thing they saw, and it sometimes leads to just terrible rule changes. I mean, look at the pass interference rule. I think that's clearly a failed avenue that the NFL has taken in regards to reacting to a very bad call. I think they should have focused more on fixing the actual problem as opposed to fixing the review of the problem, and that's essentially what the NFL is doing. So, what if I asked you what was the number one topic of conversation? Would you be able to guess in one guess?
Videotape, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yes. Surprise, surprise. So, in the 9-minute clip that you watch, or the press conference, I believe there was 3 or 4 questions spread across the entire conference directed towards the Patriots filming, which again is kind of speaks to the mentality that the media has when it comes to this team, because um, nothing else matters. It's just it's about the Patriots, because the Patriots, these headlines were created, and this was a question asked towards the end of it.
To this point, how believable is their explanation in your mind for what they say their intent was?
Ed, one of the things I've learned is you don't draw conclusions until you have all the information.
What?
Uh,
uh, I almost fell out of my chair when I heard that last night,
yeah,
because I'm like, what?
did he really say that just now?
Yeah,
Did you really say that? Yeah.
because to me, when did you learn that? During Deflategate, when that's exactly what you did? You jump to a
Four words.
conclusion?
Four words.
Yeah,
More probable than not.
yeah. So
That's drawing conclusions.
ugh, it's I was flabbergasted, to say the least. But I couldn't. I had to. Yeah. Here's the rest of it. Ugh.
Was.
Ed, one of the things I've learned is
Well,
you
here it is
don't
again.
draw conclusions until you have all the information. So from our standpoint, I want to look at all the information. Once we have all the information, then we draw a conclusion. We're not going to draw conclusions along the way.
Oh my God, I can't. I listened to it a few times last night, and it's even funnier this morning, because again, that's exactly what you did in Deflategate. I mean, that's exactly what you've done on multiple occasions. I mean, to me, this is like, I mean, look, we've gotten enough information, and the question was in regards to the Patriots explanation, which the more and more information comes out, it seems like it's a very legitimate explanation for what happened. However, it has already snowballed into every sort of conceivable conspiracy theory from both media and obviously fans of other teams and who hate the Patriots. So. The 2 issues obviously I had was the hypocrisy from Roger Goodell, and just the blatant, like, I mean, come on, like, really. You just summed up what you did literally in Deflategate. The whole Deflategate investigation was all predicated on an assumption that you made, an assumption of guilt that you worked backwards to try to prove, and you failed spectacularly. But that's not how it's remembered, because we already had that misinformation out there for too long, and the NFL obviously enjoyed having that out there because it made them look right. Plus, I mean, the fact that it was against the Patriots, you could pretty much do and say whatever you want, and no one's going to give you slack. So. That kind of bugged me, because again, it seems like this was just an incredibly unfortunate mistake and just mishap in terms of what happened with the Patriots. I wish I had the tweet up in front of me, but someone spoke to just a guy who does stuff like this, like sports documentaries. And it's like, look, sometimes depending on who you are as a cameraman, you get, half hour, an hour, 8 hours of just B-roll film. And it's just basically used for filler. And we see it all the time. Maybe we don't notice it as much when we watch all these films, but next time you watch a documentary and you have a 5-second cut screen of a coach yelling on the sidelines or fans cheering in the screen, that's what that is. And I don't think, I feel like this is such a idiotic situation overall, and the idea that the media is out to find something bad is kind of the mentality that I see them going for, when in fact, and you brought this up yesterday with how Matt Chatham described it, you're supposed to present facts in a unbiased situation, and you allow people to decide for you. It seems to me that instead of trying to figure out what happened, people are trying to figure out what other dirt people have on the Patriots, or what other bad things can we, figure out, quote unquote. So, and to me, that's the entire mentality when it comes to covering the Patriots, and especially in a situation like this. And I think that question and the fact that there were 4 or 5 questions when there was only about 10 questions overall in this whole press conference, to me, that was pretty telling. But yeah, look, neither of us think this is any big deal in terms of anything. I mean, all the facts point to, yeah, this was just a mistake on a third-party camera crew that was there filming a documentary. And one of the points that someone brought up, and I can't remember who it was, but and again, it kind of speaks to this mentality. So, the Patriots filmer was there with like a Bruins hat on, sitting in plain sight right in front of the Bengals, and they said they got 8 minutes of sideline footage. Well, to me, if and from everything I've heard about the press box, and you brought it up yesterday as well, like, you can't as much as take out a camera phone without someone saying anything. So you either didn't care at the time, or you allowed them to knowingly or unknowingly continue to break the rules in an attempt to get you. You know what I mean? And in that case, that's, because why wouldn't you say something if someone got up there with a tripod and set up a camera and aimed it right at the field? I mean, it's a press box full of people from the Bengals, from the Browns. Like, why would no one say anything and allow 8 minutes of that filming to happen before someone had an issue? So again, it seems like we're gonna take the negative approach and just assume there's something nefarious and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, 8 minutes seems to be like the key word here with everything. I know you brought up the
2
point
pounds
about
of air
B-roll.
pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Absolutely.
it's
That's
the
exactly
equivalent.
what it's going to be. And that's what people are coming back with. First of all, I'm glad that you brought up B-roll, because I actually discussed this yesterday on Locked On Patriots about B-roll footage and exactly what it means and what it's not. It's not stock footage. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's stock footage. They've got that all historical. They can just put that in.
Mhm.
No, what B-roll is it's meant to be a simultaneous real-time insert. So that way someone that is filming can actually be able to see the bird's eye view of what the subject of the documentary is seeing. In this case, it would be the scout, the advanced scout, and what's being seen through his eyes. So that's point one. The second point that you made is 8 minutes being too excessive. A lot of people are saying that. Joe Geiza, who is a camera and
Yes.
a production operator for CBS WBZ up here in Boston, put out a tweet yesterday basically saying that he shot more than 15 minutes, in excess of 15 minutes of footage on Patrice Bergeron, B-roll footage for the Boston Bruins for about a 30-second spot.
Mhm.
So that should tell you right there the B-roll footage has to be shot in excess. It has to be shot in abundance. And it's really up to the whim or the direction of the editor as to how that footage is used. So to say 8 minutes is excessive and to dismiss it based on that is lazy. It's not a complete version of what happened. So that's the second part of that. And the last part is the 8 minutes of the time it takes to be able to film that. Yes, I can tell you from personal experience, in a press box, 8 minutes is far too long
Mhm.
for anyone to be able to do something like that undetected without someone from the organization, whether it be the Bengals, whether it be the Browns. Obviously, the Browns were there, but there were Bengals people up in that press box.
Mhm.
Why would you let somebody do that? Why would you not, look at something like that? So it's not a situation where these guys were looking to be covert or they were looking to try to get away with something. They were right out, and it's not a place where you can hide in plain sight. It's a place where you're pretty well under the microscope. You're in a fishbowl when you're there. And yeah, I just think that it would be. I know the Bengals employee came over and tried to look at the monitor and things of that nature, but yeah, just something's not adding up in terms of how that went down.
No, it's peak paranoia when it comes to the Patriots, and it's why we get the rumblings from the unnamed NFC executive that says Belichick needs to be fined regardless. I mean, this whole idea that they need to be fined or punished regardless of what the facts are is just speaks to me of the mentality that a lot of people have, and they're not ashamed to show it. I mean, that's why you get buffoons like Max Kellerman up here talking about I think Belichick's a liar and a cheater. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what part of this whole situation screams that to you? And it's just obviously it's there to get clicks and a reaction, but at what extent? At what point? You're up there making an ass of yourself essentially, and that's as kind as I can put it. So again, we thought it at the time. It was a whole nothing burger. Everything that's come out since it seems to support that, except for the fact that it continues to get framed as a investigation with not very little answers to it by the four-letter networks and FS1s of the world. So, which again, that's just par for the course for the Patriots.
This is not the first time this conversation's occurred.
um, so we'll see how it plays out. Again, I kind of, to be honest, I think the Patriots should just go full heel on this and just go sign Antonio Brown and just go out and show up to the stadium with like t-shirts with like cameras on it just to screw with people and get in their heads, because at this point the Patriots are so far in people's heads, and it's not just fans, it's not just like local media, it's national media people. They're so far in ahead, like just like embedded in their subconscious, and guys like Ryan Clark, who, I mean, they get up there and they and I shared a clip yesterday of Aaron Dobson burning him on a 81-yard touchdown from Tom Brady. He gets up there saying like they are the best cheaters. Like, are you kidding me? Ryan Clark? Like, no, you're up here saying they're the best cheaters because they beat you, and you can't accept that. I mean, let's be real here. Stop lying to yourself and stop lying to everyone out there. They're not the best cheaters. They're the best team, and that's why they beat you, and that's why you're upset, because you can't get over it. And that's really the case with a lot of these guys, from the Marshall Falks of the world, and the teams that have fallen victim to the Patriots cheating. Well, no, you just didn't play good enough, and you didn't coach good enough, and you didn't execute good enough, and that's why you lost. So yeah. So again, it's just at this point you kind of know what you get when you follow the Patriots. These things can kind of pop up out of nowhere because they kind of materialize out of nothing. And when you can materialize something out of nothing, you can never not expect anything. So if only what we know about the Patriots, we know that they're probably going to use this to go on another Super Bowl run, which I'd be okay with. So uh, let's move on, because we only have about 10 minutes left, and we have a Thursday night football game here to talk about, and I do want to talk about it a little bit, because despite it being the New York Jets, the Jets, and again, I promise you tomorrow I will have that clip of that guy saying that, because that was classic Jets. Like, you get up on the national stage to announce a draft pick and you misspell Jets. Like, come on, like, ugh. I mean, I'd like to say that's my favorite Jets moment of all time, but clearly it's not, because there's just been so many of them that I enjoy so much more, butt fumble included. So, but we do have the Jets going to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, a banged up Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. So there's been some suggestion, should the Ravens sit Lamar Jackson? No, that's foolish. If he's healthy enough to play, he needs to be out here. This isn't the NBA. This isn't load management. He's your starting quarterback. Trying to, like, the one seed isn't locked up by any means for Baltimore, so they have to keep winning. And if they drop a game like this to New York, that could be tough, because we knock on the Jets fairly often, and I will not stop doing that, because it's so damn easy. But their defense is pretty good, and this is a defense that could give Baltimore some troubles on offense. And then really, you never know because it's Thursday night football, and we know in football, eh, any given Sunday, or in this case, any given Thursday, because we saw the Jets beat the Well, I don't know how impressive that was because it's the Cowboys, but we've seen the Jets beat the Cowboys. We've seen at the time a bad Atlanta Falcons team beat New Orleans. So it's certainly in the realm of capabilities that the Jets come out and upset the Ravens. That's why you play Lamar Jackson. What are you looking for in this game, and what are you expecting to see in terms of? I guess do you expect Lamar Jackson to play, and do you expect him to play well?
Yeah, I fully expect them to play, and I do expect them to play well. And I think the Ravens are looking at this game as something that needs to be defended against this quote unquote trap game. Don't forget, whether we want to admit it or not, the Jets won 4 out of their last 5. So this
Yeah.
is a team that is capable of stringing together wins. There's talent on both sides of the ball. We've discussed this several times. So I think a lot of what I'm looking to see tonight is the Baltimore Ravens coming out, using their defense to be able to lock down Sam Darnold, confuse him at the line of scrimmage. The teams that have been successful against the Jets, those are the teams that have been able to do that. The Patriots, definitely, we saw them do it twice this year. Of course, the infamous "we're seeing ghost" game and all that. I think Darnold has played much better since then. I think a lot of that was to do him coming back from missing a good period of time and just facing a great defense. So Baltimore's defense will need to step up and keep them at bay tonight. I do expect Lamar Jackson to be able to run the ball on this team, even though the run defense for the Jets seems to be their better asset rather than their pass defense. I still expect them to come out and do that. So look for Lamar Jackson, look for a heavy dose of Mark Ingram. I think Baltimore knows they need to win these games when they can, rack up the wins while they can, and I think they come out that way. I look for them to be aggressive tonight and take it to the Jets early.
Yeah, and look, technically, and it's a big technically, the Jets are still in playoff contention. And part of that is, obviously, like you said, they've won 4 of their last 5, so they are kind of starting to put things together. And I'd assume that Le'Veon Bell will be back, fresh off his 251 bowling game, so I think he'll obviously play well. And of course, when he's on the field for the Jets, they are a better team. I do think he's a tad bit overrated. I don't think he's as good as most assumed he was going to be for the Jets, and I think the production kind of says that on its own. But again, don't be surprised if this Jets team gives the Ravens a bit of trouble, because we've talked about it the last few days. I mean, there's a little bit of a idea of what you can do to slow this Ravens offense down. Now, not every team is capable of doing it. Again, I mean, the plan's great until you get punched in the mouth, and a lot of teams get punched in the mouth by the Ravens, and that plan goes out the window. However, there is a plan that can be used to help slow this offense down. If you can slow it down, then anything can happen, and Sam Darnold could get hot and make a few plays, and this offense can make a few plays, and the Jets could be, sing an upset, and all of a sudden, they put themselves in an even worse draft position, because that's such a Jets thing to do. So I'm glad you brought up Mark Ingram, because we normally don't do it for Thursday, but I did have a couple little prop bets here. So we talked about the Jets defense being very good stopping the run, and Mark Ingram is obviously runs very well behind, he's behind Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson's leading team in rushing. But the last couple of games, he's had at least 55 yards rushing, and with Lamar Jackson banged up, that could have the potential to be his workload could increase tonight. So over under for you for 54.5 rushing yards for Mark Ingram tonight.
I'm going to go over on that. And I think that the reason being is because I think the Jets are going to try to game plan against having Lamar Jackson beat them with his legs. I think that opens things up for Mark Ingram.
Yep.
That's what we saw against the Patriots. You could see that, and both of them actually did a fairly adept job of running the football well. But I think a lot of ways what's going on with Ingram is I think he's going to be able to break free and take those extra opportunities when the Jets defense focuses on Lamar Jackson. I think that's going to open up for Mark Ingram. So yeah, I think that's a tough one. It wouldn't surprise me to see him go under, but my gut reaction tells me to go the over on that.
And my gut's telling me to go the under, because I want to disagree with you. No, I look, I was kind of borderline.
No, please do.
I was borderline on it too, because again, I do kind of think the Jets are going to surprise little people defensively. I think this is a Thursday night games, this situation. I think this is a perfect opportunity for the Jets to give false hope to their fans, and this is exactly type of game that they would do that. So I do think that their defense is going to show up, and especially their run defense. So I think they're going to limit both Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram. So I'm going to go with the under there, and that'll kind of indicate what I think. How I think this game is going to play out, which I do feel like it's going to be a very low scoring game. So in that sense, my other one has to do with another Ravens skill position player. Over under 74.5 receiving yards for Marquise Hollywood Brown.
Oh, over under. I'm actually going to go under on this one, believe it or not. I think that the Ravens, the way they're going to play tonight, I think they're going to play more conservatively in terms of the ground attack that the aerial attack that they put forth. I think they're going to go ground and pound on this one. I think that's the way to take it to the Jets. So I'm going to go under on this, but Hollywood is explosive, and if he can break free, then he can eclipse that pretty quickly. So I'm going by pure gut at this point, not by logistics. I say under on that.
Yeah, and I'll have to agree with you actually on that one too, because again, I do think this is going to be a low scoring game. My last one, Le'Veon Bell, over under 99.5 total yards. That's rushing and receiving against this Ravens defense.
Oof.
Le'Veon,
Le'Veon is he's motivated to I think maybe showcase himself a little bit. I don't want to necessarily, but you know what? I'm going to go under on this. I'm going to go under on it. I'm going to say that he doesn't get 100 yards rushing tonight. I think the Baltimore Ravens defense is going to be queuing in on him. I think they're going to try to make Sam Darnold beat them through the air and try to make him utilize some of the offensive skill position weapons that he's got. I think the Ravens are going to come in and try to shut down Le'Veon, knowing that he wants to have a big game. So I go under on the 99.
I'm gonna go over because I do think he's for all those reasons that you're right for the reasons that you give. I just think he's actually going to have that big game, and again, I think he's gonna catch a handful of balls. I mean, rush for a few yards, and I can see him getting say 50 on both or 75 rushing, 25 receiving, and that to me would be enough. And I think that'll be good for the Jets. So before we let you go, do you have a game pick? Because actually I'll go first. I'll give you time to think for a minute. So I got the Ravens winning this game. It's not an upset. As much as I was alluding to it, but I do have the Ravens winning this game 13-7. Very low scoring.
Yeah, very low scoring. That's I have the Ravens winning this one as well. I don't see the Jets being able to pull off the upset, although for the first time in maybe my entire life, I might actually be sort of halfway out of the side of my mouth rooting for the Jets tonight. But I don't see them being able to pull this one out. I do like Baltimore in this. Again, I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair, but I think it's going to be a little bit more points on the board than what you had originally said. I like the Baltimore Ravens in this one, 21-10.
Okay, all right, yeah. So we both got the Ravens, and hopefully we're both wrong. I'll never admit it, but look, you can see the writing on the wall. You want the Ravens to lose if you're a Patriots fan. So guess what? You got to choose. And I'm not rooting for the Jets. I would never root for the Jets. In fact, I'm torn to actually almost root against them, like to root for the Ravens to beat the Jets. But that's how much I hate the Jets. So we'll see. It should be a pretty entertaining game. I do think both defenses are going to show up tonight and play fairly well. So we will see how that goes. But with that said, that we are down to our last final 45 seconds or so. So I want to take the opportunity to say thank you everyone for tuning in. Be sure to, if you're not already, search FPC Radio Live on Apple, Google, Stitcher, all those great podcast platforms, and subscribe and download our show if you miss it. If you want to go back and listen to one of our older shows, if you happen to be out of town and you miss us for a week and you want to catch up, check it out, download, subscribe. Every episode gets put up there eventually. Sometimes they're a little late, but usually the same day, so you'll be able to catch it all then. So also be sure to follow us on Twitter. It's at FPC Radio Live. I am at IGLEN31. He is at MDABATEFPC. Stay tuned, folks. Snowman in the Morning is coming up live here on Full Press Radio. We will see you tomorrow for a Football Friday. Have a good day, folks.